Have you been given notes about something, a story, a screenplay, and you were like, wait a minute, this is going to kill the aliveness to it? And you had to go back and say, well, how do I make these changes that they want, but keep that
Right.
spark to it? That's tough.
That is tough. That is tough, and that's the writer's job is to take the spirit of the note without taking the mechanics sometimes, because sometimes you're getting notes from an executive and they'll say, I don't like this scene, it's not working, or you should take this out. And if you're not connected to why you're telling the story, if you're not connected to the magic, then you can lose that magic by here's what'll happen is the executive will read the new draft and they'll go, this isn't working. And you go, but I just did what you asked me to do. Yeah, but a good executive will go, that's not what I asked you to do. I told you this wasn't working, and now it's your job to go fix what I want you to fix. But they're not a writer. So they're expecting you to do your job. And so, there are a lot of really good executives who understand that when they're giving you a note, they're also expecting you to, they're expecting some kind of alchemical process to happen so that you can distill the note to its nature and give them back something that's working. It was like Charlie Kaufman. He when he wrote Adaptation, he was adapting The Orchid Thief, and they were expecting an adaptation of that novel. Charlie Kaufman is not in that novel, okay? And so he distilled, he took that novel, and then it went through Charlie Kaufman, and he wrote this really wonderful, brilliant, mad story. And when they got it, from what I understand, they said, what the hell is this? And then a couple of days later, they went, oh, this is wonderful. But it took them a while, I think, to get on board and realize that that's why they hired him, because they were going to get his voice and his thing. And so if we don't trust our voice, it's a challenge for the writers. You've got to trust your voice in the midst of all of the fears of, I don't want to lose this job, I don't want to lose this gig, I don't want to disappoint these people. That's part of it. You're probably going to get replaced in Hollywood if you're a screenwriter. Doesn't mean that you did a bad job. It just means they're just covering their asses.
You think being a stand-up helped you come to peace with that? Or maybe just because when you're up there, I'm sure you're basically naked almost. You're very raw, and you've got hecklers, you've got people with all sorts of agendas throwing stuff at you, metaphorically, physically, whatever. And I think at some point you probably become more comfortable in that space. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just assuming here.
No, I think therapy did that, but I don't think comedy did that.
Okay, I thought maybe.
I don't think comedy gave me a thicker skin.
No, it didn't. Okay.
At all. No.
Okay.
No. No. I would say therapy.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and just realizing that it's the reason I think that writers or anybody, I don't know where I'm going this. I think early on I thought as a writer, my identity was tied to my creative work. And that's dangerous. That can really mess you up. That can make you a perfectionist. That can make you bitter. That can make you a victim. And it's not. It's got nothing to do with my self-worth. And so, in fact, I think if you're a storyteller, that's a great luxury, and it's a privilege. And so you get to tell stories, and the stories aren't coming from if you really want to tell great personal stories, you want to be connected to the universal. You want to be connected to why this is going to be relatable to other people. That's not going to make your work less personal. It's going to make it more personal. okay? Because you're going to be more willing to really get into the nitty-gritty of your struggle because you're going to understand the transformation. I don't know if does that make sense?
Yeah. So when you decided that I'm still going to be creative, but I'm going to almost have is it almost like having two lives? One is where you're human, and the other one is where you're a creator who's having a human experience. I know that sounds so cliche, and then if somebody rejects me for my creator persona, that doesn't mean I'm a bad human.
Well, I guess so. But I mean, like it always sucks getting rejected, but writers are constantly being rejected. And it's just part of it. The more you do it, the more it just rolls off your back. In other words, I'll give you an example. Let's say I write a romantic comedy and it gets into the hands of a guy who makes horror movies. And he goes, we're passing on this. They're not passing on it because it lacks quality or value. They're passing on it because they make horror movies. And that's Hollywood, and I'm just using a broad generalization. I'm talking about genre, but you can write a script that may not speak to the person. That doesn't mean that the script doesn't have value. You hear about these scripts that are in development for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and they finally get made, and then they win an Oscar. It's because somebody believed in them and they had a vision and they could see what that thing wanted to be. It's difficult sometimes to read a screenplay and be able to see what the movie's going to be. So you've got to believe in yourself. You've got to believe in yourself. And I think it can be easy if something gets rejected. Here's the other thing. If something's getting rejected a lot, you also need to have the humility to go, well, maybe this isn't doing everything I need it to be doing. Okay, and so that's where craft comes in. That's where you really have to understand what you're trying to do. And sometimes, you can hear writers. There's a fine line between being stubborn and having the humility to be teachable. Because if you don't have the humility to be teachable and hear why something's not working for them, you can kind of get stuck.
And then going back to working in the maximum security prison.
Right.
I know I
didn't do a lot of that.
Okay, I know, but it's just so fascinating to me. Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah.
So the 2 times or whatever, however many times, sorry. You saw that humility in them. How easy was it to have them as sort of a captive audience? Sorry, that's wrong. Let me just scratch that. I guess what I'm trying to say is so many people, they go to a great school and they've kind of been groomed all their life that they're like this golden child and they're great and they're going to come and everything they do is fantastic. And that's great. They have this wonderful support system.
Right.
And then I think in some sense that can hurt them here in this industry because it's a rude awakening when someone doesn't agree with their work. Doesn't mean they don't like them personally.
Right.
So when you saw people that maybe had either been born with more humility or had been forced to adopt that attitude,
I think this business will, you will either, become humble or bitter. So because you're always going to be getting rejected, constantly getting rejected. But it's not personal. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question.
Oh, it's great, and I love it. Where does the road diverge for the humility?
Oh,
I agree. I totally agree with you. So,
well, I think it's just, I don't know if you can teach that. I don't know if you can. I think it's just humility is going to make you a better writer because it's going to give you humanity. You're going to have compassion. You're going to, in other words, humility is just, it's going to make your job easier because you're going to also have compassion for yourself. It's going to widen your perspective. You're going to see why your writing isn't doing everything you want it to do, because as writers, I think we've all got blind spots. We don't, William Goldman talks about how you come up with these ideas and you can see this movie in your head, and then you start to write it. And once you start to write it, these ideas become earthbound. You know, they're earthbound. They're not, it's really hard work. It's really hard work to create a great story. And I just think humility is just something that if you don't have it, you might want to find a way to, you know, you're going to become humble in Hollywood just by virtue of the rejection. But I don't think there's a way to exercise humility, but I think there is a way to, I think if you have compassion for yourself and for other people, and are gentle with yourself, and have a healthy perception of rejection, or an understanding that I'm not being rejected, it's going to lead to just a happier life.